Hey, everybody. I'm Jane.
And I'm Sarah.
And you're listening to the Medium Curious podcast, the show that traverses between all the worlds, and we are your cheerful tour guides.
Oh, yeah, we could do that. And we're bringing Chris Dingman along with us today.
Yes.
He is a vibraphonist, a music channeler, and a medium.
Oh, yeah. And he can take you right over to the other worlds through his beautiful music. So listen in, y'all, to this amazing conversation.
Woohoo! Let's go. Hi, Chris.
Hello. Hi, Sarah and Jane.
Well, I've been telling Jane about you for a while now. And can you tell everybody else about you right now?
Sure. My name is Chris Dingman, and I am a vibraphonist and composer and music channeler. And
Ooh, all right. Oh, so good. Music channeler. Yeah. Yes.
And
I love how you act surprised.
Well, I actually I haven't heard that term before, and it just makes me so happy. It makes me so happy. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Nice.
you are indeed a music channeler. Okay. Can you tell everybody what a vibraphonist is?
Yes. So it doesn't have to do with like telephones or anything like that. It's
That's a lifelong conversation
Yeah.
right there.
yeah. It's best if I just hand you a card that like shows a picture of it, because then you'll be like, oh yeah. But I think the shortest way for most people is xylophone is X in the alphabet, right? So everyone knows that. And vibraphone is a like cousin of the xylophone. It's made of metal, so instead of being really tinkly like a xylophone, it's really ringy and ethereal. And you play with mallets. It's a mallet percussion instrument, and it's like a big piano that you play with mallets that's made of metal.
It's so beautiful. I love it. I actually played the vibraphone in the pit marching band
Oh my God,
many
you did?
years ago. Yes.
I
Yes.
didn't know that.
Yeah. I'm definitely not a professional. Definitely not.
So, yeah, I think that's the pit orchestra is a common entry point for vibraphone knowledge for a lot of people. I get that a lot, but mostly I get, what is that? And I didn't even know that was a thing. But the thing is that most people have heard it. It's in a ton of movies and commercials and songs, and it's all over the place, but it's not often referred to by name. You don't see it up by itself a lot.
Yeah. I get that, actually. I mean, I think everybody who listens to this podcast knows that I'm a musician too. And we both went to music school. So we studied this for years and years and years. And it's taken very seriously. Like all of our music courses are taken very seriously. And still, when I say to people, I'm an oboist, they're like, what? What is that?
It's like a clarinet on crack, right?
It's like, yeah, it's black. It looks like a clarinet. It's got silver keys on it. If you've ever heard Peter and the Wolf, it's the duck.
There you go.
Oh my God, Sarah, I might have to run with that one.
Oh,
Yeah, I think that's
So what brought you, Chris, to your duck?
to my duck. Yeah, so I started off playing. I grew up in San Jose, so not too far from where you all are now. And I started out playing piano at a pretty young age, and I was really excited by music of all kinds. And I added drums to the mix when I was about 12. And then I was really into drums for a long time. Played in some ska bands, and I grew up in the 90s. And jazz, of course, got into jazz. And then when I went to college at Wesleyan University, the first person I met was in the astronomy department. That was my college advisor. And he said, oh, you're into music. Oh, let me send you down to Jay Hogard in the music department. And you just called him up on the phone because like people didn't have cell phones. It was just like office phones. And he was just in his office, and I just went there.
vibraphones.
Yeah, he had vibraphones there too. Because he is a vibraphonist, and so when I got to him, and he's the director of like a lot of jazz programs there. So I wasn't going to him thinking I was going to go learn to play vibraphone, but just as a to get into the music and jazz stuff that was going on at the school. And he took a look at me. He's like, "Have you ever played vibraphone?" And I was like, "Well, I've hit it once or twice because I had in high school, for like percussion. I played in like some high school musical pit orchestras that had a very makeshift vibraphone. So I technically had hit one once or twice. So I could say, yeah, I've played one." And he was like, "You're going to play vibes," because vibes is the short for vibraphone.
It's got a different feel to
like
it
that.
too, right? Like I play vibes.
I play vibes. Yeah.
Wait, I play vibes too,
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah. Yeah. Nowadays, a lot of people play vibes.
That's amazing. And it turned out to be true, right? He took one look at you. He said, "You're a vibraphonist." And you're like, let's see. And he kind of swooped you in, hey?
Pretty much. Well, there's a little more to the story because I was pretty attached to being a drummer. But I did start taking his classes. He started giving me lessons. He really encouraged me, and he went out of his way to do so. So big thank you, Jay Hogard.
Aw.
And after a couple years, I was in a different major, not a music major, but I went to a study abroad program to study music in South India. And when I got there, after a week after I got there, I got a call from my parents telling me that a really close friend who I'd grown up with had just died.
Mm.
And it was like a huge shock.
Mhm.
Here I am completely in a, already having like culture shock, and then the shock on top of the shock. And after a month or two of soul searching during that summer, I realized a few things. One, that music was the only thing I cared about. Maybe not the only thing, but you know what I mean? It was what I really wanted to do with my life.
Yeah.
And that the other studies I was doing were not that for me. I was still interested, but it just wasn't that level of like, I'm doing this with my life kind of thing. And two, that my instrument of choice was the vibraphone,
Mm.
and that I really wanted to like immerse myself in learning how to play vibraphone, how to play jazz. And that's what I went and did. And then that was the turning point. From then on, I was a vibraphonist.
So let's move to the music channeler part of your identity, which is what is so fascinating to me. Just everybody's journey who ends up in this space.
Yeah.
You had been floating around in my awareness through several different people, through very different circles. My friend Eliza, who's been on this podcast, and her brother-in-law, you guys went to college together. So he's been talking to me about you for years. This vibraphonist friend of mine, it's like, yeah, I'd love to go see him. That's great. And then Eliza said that she was going to what you call transformations, right? This is these sessions that you put on where you play for people, and it's online, right?
Yeah. It's an online program. Yeah.
Went to that, and she had so much to say, and it was really beautiful. And then I found out that I'd seen you advertised by Mary Greasy, who's also one of our podcast guests. And I remember seeing an ad for something that you were doing. I was like, oh my goodness, music channeler. I'm so into it. Who is this person? And then lo and behold, it's you. And here you are. And I couldn't be happier.
So can you tell us about your transformations event? I haven't had the benefit of experiencing it yet, although I'm all signed up now for your newsletter. So I'm going to be showing up a lot. Y'all are going to be like, oh God, here's Jane again. So
awesome.
Can you tell us a little bit about what happens in those sessions?
Yeah. And I think to do so, I need to like rewind slightly from there, if you don't mind. And
please
go to like, how did I go from, I think I'll try jazz vibes at college to like, okay, now I run channeled music sessions on Zoom.
Oh, that's a leap. I see that.
But I'll skip over a lot because, you know, I was a professional jazz musician. I still am. For quite a while there, I went to grad school. I went to grad school at the Thelonious Monk Institute of Jazz. Studied with Herbie Hancock and Wayne Shorter and Terrence Blanchard.
Wow.
Played with a bunch of people. That was in LA, and then I moved to New York, and I started collaborating with people and doing and made a couple of my own jazz albums.
Wow. Cool.
And simultaneously was exploring Vipassana meditation, which was very impactful for me and was opening me up in a lot of ways, including creatively. And that was really like the start of being able to like write music that felt like it was coming from a really deep place for me. And also was exploring like solo improvisation coming from a similar place, like a longer form. So I was starting to explore that even maybe in 2010 or 12, something like that. But in 2018, I had the experience of my dad got really sick, and we found out he had a terminal condition, and one thing led to another. It was kind of a rare condition, so all of a sudden we were told he didn't have much time left. And this was in the hospital, and we were there with him, and I played some music for him off my phone, but it felt like I wished I could have done much more. And we were fortunate to have a couple more months with him, and I ended up playing music for him while he was at home in home hospice care. And I recorded all the music as I was playing it for him, and he used the music, and it was this whole very unplanned project that we did together. Like and it was to help him. Yeah. And I wanted to convey that feeling of peacefulness and meditation, because he hadn't experienced meditating, but he was interested in it. And so I wanted to convey it for him and also help him with what he was dealing with. He couldn't sleep. He was in pain, many things. And that was like this opening of this whole experience, playing music in that kind of way for somebody. And after that happened, by the time he passed, we had about 5 hours of music recorded, and the music got released as the Peace album a couple years later. And from then on is when I started exploring playing for music in this kind of healing way. And that's what's led to the Transformation series, which is actually about 45 minutes of music straight. It's a deeper session. It goes as the name implies. There's always some kind of feeling of change that's taking place through it, and people are invited to join it, just to lie there and experience it, or to use it as a journaling time. There's actually my co-host and the person who runs the organization that sponsors the series is a wonderful reflective writing specialist named Debbie Bronkema. And she always gives a little prompt for people. And we have a little check-in. And I just get a read of where people are at, and then I play for them. And I always try to connect with them as much as I can through that. And then we have a little sharing time afterwards. And that's Transformations. And recently we just added another wing of Transformations called Transformations for Grief.
Wow.
Which is for people who are grieving. And there's another co-host named Dina Persia, who's a psychotherapist, and she helps hold that space. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's so incredibly helpful. Community is so critical right now. And how beautiful that you've been up and running for a while, healing people with your music and helping them process their grief. And wow, I can only imagine how much it's going to grow now.
Yeah, there's a lot of grief out there.
Yeah.
For all kinds of reasons. And we do hold space for all kinds of grief, not just obviously, people who have lost loved ones, we welcome them. And I am familiar with how needed that is.
Mm-hmm.
But there's other reasons to grieve, plenty of them, and they're all valid and they all deserve space to be held for them. So we welcome all of those.
Yeah. The word that comes to mind, especially having gone to one of your transformation sessions, it's a very liminal space where it feels like you're in this period before transcendence. It just there is something very tangible in it, yet so very ethereal. And being a musician, getting to go, plus being I don't know, what am I, an energy feeler, an energy perceiver?
Oh, please put that on your card.
Yeah.
Energy feeler.
My experience of going there was really profound. So I think share this with a lot of other musicians and a lot of mediums. I have synesthesia, so I have an extra sense of music, so I don't just hear it, I also experience it visually. So when I was listening to you, I was just seeing all of the different, what the vibraphone sounds look like, and when you put the pedal on, and then seeing the different colors. But then I also got, through the training that we've done, Jane, with our mentorship, I was able to tune into your colors and how you started off in the beginning towards what your colors look like in the end. I could sense your transformation in that liminal space to transcendence, because you started off, I could very strongly feel you based on your colors, very much in your heart. Like you come out there and it's just like, it's so beautiful. You were just all heart. And then like all of the creativity, I could feel that in color orange. So you were all like green and orange. And then as you were playing, like the colors just moved to this beautiful shimmery, translucent, pearlescent white color towards the end of your playing. And it's just, the whole experience for me was just so cool. I don't know if I did a good job of explaining it, but I really thoroughly enjoyed it, if you can't tell.
I love it.
Oh my gosh.
I love it. And, I don't know if there's such thing as a bad job of explaining it, because that it was true to your experience of it.
Right.
And, but it resonated for me, that description for sure.
I've never heard that you had synesthesia, Sarah. So that was fascinating to even hear that today. And I'm still like, but it makes sense, because we did a sound bath recently, Chris, with another guest, and Sarah came out of it with like story after story of this amazing stuff that she saw. So now it's all making sense. But I had also read some of your other testimonials, and I myself have just been listening to your music for the last few days, and what I love about it is, even without being in that intentional space, and, we've talked a lot about intentions and how powerful they are. And once you're in an intentional space, then you're going to go on a journey, whether you want to or not. You're going to go on a journey that I've been just chilling with your music in my ears. And I was telling Sarah this morning, I was cleaning, and I was like, I can't believe Chris can make cleaning like transcendent. And he was like, what is even happening in my bathtub? It's so clean right now. I just want to put a pitch in for your music, like any version of it, like your albums, and your experiences. And I'm going to be headed there, like I said. But I also just your music is very special. It's got so many layers to it, and I can feel it in my body, I could feel, I was like, me and this bathtub are getting healed.
It's so good. Music's good when you feel it in your body. I mean, that's the beauty of music.
Totally. Yeah.
Let alone in your bathtub.
Exactly.
Yes. Especially if you've met my bathtub. A lot of good things happening. Speaking of baths, I've seen on your site that something about the Bardo Bath events, and I pretty much again wanted to buy a ticket to New York. So, can you tell us about them?
Yeah, so around well, the backstory is Bardo Baths are a collaboration with a group called the Psychedelic Sangha. I've been collaborating with them for a couple years, and we've actually done some events in Berkeley at the Alembic. Surely be back there at some point. And so you might not have to buy a ticket to New York, but if you want to, you're most welcome.
I'm manifesting it. I don't know how
Yeah.
it's going to happen though, for sure.
But yeah, we've the Bardo Bath is what Psychedelic Sanga's founder Doc Kelly would call a Dharma art experience, and so it's a multimedia thing involving guided meditation. Usually for a Bardo Bath, he leads a meditation that's a death meditation that guides people through their own peaceful death into the Bardo, which is this liminal space between lifetimes. And this is all based on the Tibetan Book of the Dead, and also the psychedelic experience. So we do this meditation. And the music guides into the Bardo, and then I play for about 90 minutes.
Wow.
And people are, usually it's like a sound bath style event where people are lying down, and there are projections of Dharma art videos that are kind of abstract, what it sounds like. Yeah, art videos, kind of somewhat abstract depictions of like some of what's described in the Tibetan Book of the Dead about the Bardo. And then eventually we end, and it turns out you weren't dead. And so you get guided back into the world of the living, and then there's some time for processing at the end of that. So that's a Bardo Bath.
Wow. Oh my God.
Yeah.
I mean, just the marketing alone, right? Bardo Bath, so good. That sounds incredible. I mean,
Yeah.
And is it curious about the Tibetan Book of the Dead? Is it similar to the Tibetan Book of Living and Dying? Because I'm familiar with that one, and what I understand about that is from the Tibetan Book of Living and Dying is that the more you are ready for your death, and it's like a whole art, right, of dying and
Right.
preparing for death.
Yeah, that's the
Okay.
intention.
Got it. And so then it's such an important passage to go to the other side. And then the thing is, what's so weird about us in the West, we're like, I don't want any part of it. And, I'm going to run away from, like, it's never going to happen to us, which is so hilarious. Right?
Yeah.
So the idea that you can take someone on this journey and bring them back and have, maybe there's many of your fans who are doing it many, many times. It's so beautiful because they have that fear basically is going to be released.
That's completely the intention. Yeah.
Hmm.
And to increase that awareness and help people in that way. And as you can tell, I'm helping people in that way in a lot of different ways. And it's something I've been drawn to for a while. And so I'm happy to be exploring it. And there's more.
Are we
on
getting
the
to
way.
your mediumship? Because
I'm watching Sarah's face. Yep, that's where we're getting to.
I would like to hear about that.
I mean, it seems like that is the name of this podcast, right?
Yes, sir. You've come to the right place.
Did I show up in the right building here?
Yep. Yeah. This is the right building.
Nice.
Yes.
Yeah. So a big part of what started happening after my dad passed and piqued my curiosity was every time I would play, I'd start seeing things. And I was like, what's going on here? That wasn't something that was, it had happened occasionally before that, but not very much. And I didn't really pay much attention to it. But then once it started happening a lot, like every time I would play for a while, I would see people, and like people I didn't recognize.
Whoa.
And I I was just recording at home, and I would see these people in my mind, and I just started wondering, like, who are these people? Because how would I see people I've never seen before, like, in my head? That's like,
I do actually. I do know.
Actually, it turns out you totally do know, but I did not know. So I didn't understand what it was for a long time, and I was trying to make sense of it. I thought, oh, maybe these are the people that music's eventually going to reach, and maybe it's like some kind of psychic thing or whatever. But in retrospect, I think in a lot of the time it was spirits. I was seeing spirits, and so the way I've come to that conclusion is I started paying attention to what mediumship is, partially because it found me in the form of Zimbabwean Imbira music, which is music that's used as a telephone to call the spirits in mediumship ceremonies. And this music came into my life around the beginning of the pandemic, and I didn't even know that's what it was for. I just started getting attracted to it. And then like months later, I learned that it's for mediumship. And I was like, whoa, because of what was already happening. Right. I was like, okay, there's something here. Like there's something big here. And I started learning the music and getting really into it. And it's influenced my music quite a bit. So music that you've heard of mine that's more recent, like the Journey's albums, those are very influenced by Zimbabwe and Imbira music from the Shona people of Zimbabwe. And so along with this, I started getting an antenna up for, how can I learn mediumship? And I was drawn to Mary Grisey, partially because she was on my partner's podcast. That's how I learned about her. I mean, really, so largely because of that. And I listened to her interview and I was like, this person's just so cool and so straightforward, and like, I just really like her vibe. And then I started just paying attention to what she's doing. And then a little over a year ago, she offered a course called Between Worlds to learn about psychic and mediumship work. And that hit me over the head because my publishing company that I use for all my music to like track royalties and stuff is called Between Worlds.
Yeah, none of this should be a surprise to you, Chris. This sounds like a total setup. Like all of these following steps is like, of course, this is where this is headed. It's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
In retrospect, it's like, duh.
Well, that's the joy of discovery. We just get to be these adorably dumb humans who are like, oh, wow, look at that. Sorry, but wait, I just have to ask. So was that named by someone else or did you name that? You're saying that the publishing company is
so the publishing company, when I first started writing music, meaning like in the 2000 aughts, like 2005, 6, or I think I actually made the publishing company for, it's with BMI. They track all the like radio plays and like licenses that are needed. And you have to create it's called a publishing company, but it's basically you have to name your
okay.
Your like it's like for your composition royalties.
Yeah.
For your copyright to so I picked like 3 or 4 names, and Between Worlds was not my top choice. It was like toward the bottom, and the other names I guess they were already used probably. So I got assigned Between Worlds, and I was like, all right, that's fine. And it's funny because I remember telling my parents, and they were like, oh. They were like, sorry to hear that.
Supernatural, right? What the heck is this?
And I wasn't even I had a composition called Between Worlds, and that's where it came from. Oh, yeah. It wasn't about the Bardo. It wasn't about mediumship. It wasn't that. None of this stuff was on my radar at that time.
Yeah.
And so for it to like come back from that,
I love it.
Yeah,
it's so good.
It was amazing. So I guess the obvious punchline is I took the, I signed up for that course of Mary's, even though it was maybe at a time that I didn't, I had just moved. I was a little stressed out about the idea of like signing up for something new. So I sat with myself for a little bit and I just kind of like waited for like, should I take this course? It was sort of in my mind, and I just meditated on it, and I heard very clearly my grandma's voice say, "Take the course."
Whoa.
Always the grandmas. It's always the
Oh my
grandmas.
God. Tears just sprung to my eyes. Oh.
Yeah. So I followed that advice, and it's been life-changing. I mean, it's really, Mary always says the work heals you, and it really has been amazing to see how that's been happening for me. Yeah.
It's so true. It really is true.
So are you at the place now where you're doing readings for people? And are you still in the exploration, or where are you now?
I'm at a stage where I'm doing a lot of practice readings, and probably soon we'll start doing like some form of readings for people who are not also practicing. But yeah, I feel like I'm in the, what's it called? I'm in college for mediumship.
Perfect. You're not in grad school yet, but you're in college.
Something like that.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
We love Mary so much. Gosh, I can only imagine. She's amazing.
Yeah. She's the best. And
so you mentioned that she was on your partner's podcast. Do you want to mention what your partner's podcast is?
Oh yeah, I forgot to say the name. So it's Zanetta, and they run a podcast called Art Witch.
Oh, that's awesome. Oh my God.
Which is kind of funny because that's what you are on our podcast. You're the artist and being our channeled musician. So
yeah, right.
Oh my gosh, Sarah, you mentioned something to me earlier. I wanted to hear about what you said. There was like a lightning bolt moment you experienced.
Oh, I should have mentioned this earlier when Eliza was telling me about the transformations, how she went to see you. My brain was just like, oh, and then all of a sudden, so I guess I must need spirit lightning bolts instead of just like hearing my grandmother gently say, "You should take it." It's like I get zapped. I get like a full on like, bing! And that's what happened to me. It's like, oh, okay, we're supposed to have him on the podcast.
Yeah, really? Oh, that's so funny.
Yeah. So I got hit with a lightning bolt. I mean, not an actual one, but big, huge energy surge, which it's not subtle. I get definitely clobbered.
Wow.
They want to make sure I notice.
Yeah. I think clobbered is kind of nice sometimes.
Yeah.
You know, and I did really enjoy hearing that. I mean, the way you described it, Chris, you're like, I need to make a decision. And you're just like the opposite of everyone. You're like, oh, I need to make a decision. I didn't ask 18 people and I didn't like freak out and go like, oh, you sat down and you meditated and you're in listening mode and your grandmother had the ability to come in. And so I trust that you're an amazing medium.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, because these are the states that you work in. Like this is exactly where you hang out. And you have apparently since the early aughts, whether you know it or not. You know, it just feels like such a beautiful continuation of the beautiful work you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
So welcome.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much.
I just also want to add for listeners out there who see faces. I know it's very common. I know that a lot of people, when they're falling asleep at night, will close their eyes and see lots of faces floating by. And it's never scary. It's never, ever, ever scary. It's not supposed to be a scary thing. It's very, very common. And I love, Chris, that you took note of it and you questioned what it was. You got curious about it, and that has led you more on your path.
Yeah, and I would second that. They weren't scary at all. They seemed curious. They were like, "What's going on over here?" You know, like it was kind of like they're coming up to my camera and they're like, what is that? Like, what are you doing?
Hey, anybody in there? Are you
Yeah.
Can you read this?
Yeah.
Yeah. What am I saying right now? What am I holding?
Yeah. Yeah. And I actually thought, okay, at some point I realized, okay, maybe I can ask them like more something about them. But it became hard to like maintain the conversation while I was playing.
Yeah.
Because I would kind of do it and then I would get like flashes of stuff, but it was like really hard to interpret it. And now I can see like, okay, it's hard enough when I'm just sitting still, not doing anything.
Yeah. Well, that is interesting because there's a lot of people who scribble when they do their mediumship, like Tyler Henry
like
does
Tyler
that.
Henry. Yeah.
He scribbles, he scries.
Right.
I think there's different things that people do. I've seen a lot of mediums actually rock back and forth. It gets your body doing something that takes your mind off of it takes it out of the thinking mode.
Mm.
So I think that's the perfect thing when you're playing. You're not in your brain, you're in your body.
I was thinking that, I bet you'll get to the point, Chris, where you'll be able to do both. Like you're currently in college, but I have a feeling that that's just going to be part of your jam, Also, I'm curious. I'm not a musician. Sarah's a musician. I'm married to a musician. I totally have musician envy. Just curious, like, what do you love most about it? Like, what's your favorite thing about being you?
Well, about playing music, I think the thing that what's brought me into doing this kind of channeled experience is the thrill of the unknown and like the unknown becoming known and like that feeling of like riding that edge of like and really the process of finding that's what got me so excited about creating music to begin with. And it started off with like experiencing that and writing it down, but then over time it's become more about experiencing it and like staying with it and trying to stay with it the whole time and just be like one with it. And if that makes sense, with like one with the act of creation, right? And I over time I've kind of stopped writing music because not because I don't know, it just seems like it's really that process that's the most exciting to me, not the like product that's a result. And so that's kind of that's my favorite thing. That's my jam. And how can I get on top of that? And part of what's also added that I didn't mention is at some point I started feeling the urge that I need to start singing with the music. And so that's come through a lot. I think a lot of the like kind of channeled feeling comes really from that kind of vocal toning.
Wow.
So that's been really exciting too. And I guess it's just all the exciting new thing and not really like dwelling in one place, makes me hard to market because I'm constantly moving forward with it.
It's interesting because I think in the music world, especially, the music world that I'm in, the classical music world, everything is very, very limiting as far as what's expected in your training. But what I love about you is that you're in exploratory mode, and I just see you continuing to explore. You're going to continue to do this. And I think the beauty of what you offer is in that exploration, just how much you get from it. And you're offering that to everybody else, that exploratory part of what you're doing. So I think just keep doing it. And more people are going to start arriving for that. And it isn't about the final product. It really is about the journey.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, I really love like how you brought home the name of our podcast today. Your curiosity is taking you into this space, and that's so stunning. And I say, marketing can happen with spirits. You can put them in charge.
Yeah,
please
ask them, assign it.
Your dad's a great marketer. Just be like, Dad, I need your help.
And he is.
Oh,
totally.
Yeah. Funny.
Good point.
Had a feeling.
Wonder where you got that from.
Oh yeah, just right over your left shoulder. Mm-hmm. Well, I don't want this conversation to end because this is like a true delight. You're such a magical human. So thank you for sharing you with us and with our sweet listeners. It's just been amazing.
Awesome.
Yeah, thank you so much, Chris. And when you're around here, I'm going to come check out one of your performances.
For sure. Yeah. Hopefully in March.
Okay, sounds great. Can't wait.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, our pleasure. Thank you. Okay, bye. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Medium Curious is made possible
By Jane Morgan Editing.
Sarah Rathke made the amazing music.
And Gigi Hawkins, podcast consultant.
Our logo was created by Eric Allen. Mix by Podcast Engineers.
Kyle Hansen McKee, photography.
And the dogs under the desk in Hawaii are Kalea and Domino.
And Trixie in California.